The command center was unusually quiet as the translucent screen flickered softly in the dim light, casting a pale glow on the faces of those gathered. Dr. Alara Voss stood before the assembly, her hands steady despite the weight of the moment. The swirling patterns of the cosmic blackout, decoded from the cryptic transmissions she and her team had painstakingly analyzed, pulsed faintly behind her, a ghostly map of the silent void that had severed the colony from Earth. "This is not just random noise," Ilara began, her voice calm but resolute. "The blackout is the result of a massive cosmic phenomenon, a wave of interference spreading through this sector of space. It's not abandonment or failure on Earth's part, it's something far beyond our previous understanding." Murmurs rippled through the room, faces hardened as the implications settled in. For months, fear and suspicion had poisoned their community. Now, Alara was offering a glimpse of hope, but only if they could bridge the chasms between their factions. Councillor Thane Rykov rose, his tall frame imposing in the shadowed room. His eyes, cold and calculating, locked onto Alara. "And what do you propose, Dr. Voss? That we gamble the colony's fragile resources on a theory? That we risk everything on a plan that demands trust from those who have none to give?" Ilara met his gaze without flinching. "Yes, because doing nothing guarantees collapse. This blackout threatens us all, but it also offers a path forward. The transmission contains coordinates and instructions. If we act together, we can re-establish some form of contact, or at least understand the threat." Mira Solon stepped forward, her bright eyes shining with a fierce optimism that had rallied many in recent months. "We can't afford to let fear dictate our future. Cooperation is our only chance. We've seen what factionalism brings: starvation, violence, and despair. This plan offers a way out, but only if we unite." The room fell into a heavy silence, the tension palpable. Captain Soren Hale, standing rigid near the back, finally spoke, his voice gravelly but steady. "The security forces have seen the worst of our divisions. If this plan can hold factions together long enough to save the colony, I'm with it. But we must be vigilant. There are those who will try to sabotage this effort." Alara nodded, agreed. "We need full transparency and collaboration. Jox Wren has been invaluable in uncovering hidden faction movements and underground networks. His intelligence will help us anticipate opposition." Jox, seated near the edge of the room, gave a curt nod. "There are those who cling to the old order, refusing to accept change. But they won't stop us if we stay ahead." Linway adjusted her glasses, stepping forward with fresh data. "Our latest analysis confirms that transmissions instructions are viable. The technology and signals needed exist within our reach, but it will require precise coordination and sacrifice." Ilara took a breath, feeling the gravity of the moment settle around her. "This isn't just about survival, it's about reclaiming our place in the universe. But it will demand trust, sacrifice, and a willingness to let go of old fears." Councillor Rykov's expression hardened once more, but the room's mood had shifted. The fragile truce was in motion, and though resistance remained, the tide was turning. Later, beneath the twin moons that bathed the colony in silver light, Ilara and Captain Hale stood overlooking the settlement. The colony's scattered lights twinkled like stars fallen to the alien soil, a fragile constellation of humanity's hope. "Do you really think they'll trust us?" Hale asked quietly. Ilara's sharp eyes scanned the horizon. "They have to. If we fail, this place will fall into darkness forever." He nodded slowly. "Then we'd better be ready." In the following days, Jox shared urgent intelligence from the colony's underbelly, rumors of dissent, hidden caches of weapons, and factions ready to ignite conflict at the slightest provocation. Lin Wei's signal analysis provided the timeline and parameters for the upcoming mission. Every step forward was a delicate dance between hope and peril. The colony's future hinged on fragile alliances and the willingness of its people to embrace a new path in the face of cosmic silence. As the chapter closed, Alara stood once more before the assembly, her voice steady, eyes bright with determination. The turning tide is upon us. Together, we can rise from the silence. But the choice is ours: trust and sacrifice, or collapse and oblivion. The room held its breath, the weight of their shared future pressing down like the vast, silent stars beyond. The journey ahead promised danger and uncertainty, but also the faintest glimmer of light piercing the darkness. And in that silence, hope stirred. The atmosphere inside the mission's control room was thick with tension. The low hum of machinery underscored by the sharp, insistent alarm that now pierced the silence. Sparks leaped from the main power conduit, painting the walls with erratic flashes of orange and blue. While the crew's faces, their eyes wide, muscles taut, reflected the dance of light and shadow. Alara Voss stood at the center, her breath steady despite the storm of panic threatening to unravel the fragile calm. "We're losing power in the primary systems," Lin Wei reported, fingers flying over the console as she attempted to reroute energy. "If we don't stabilize the conduit, the entire mission grid could collapse." Mira Solon tightened her jaw, her bright eyes darkening with concern. "What's the timeline?" "Minutes, maybe less," came the grim reply. Captain Soren Hale moved with precision, issuing commands to secure critical systems and prepare for possible evacuation. His normally stoic expression betrayed a flicker of unease. Ilara's mind raced, weighing options, risks, and the unbearable cost of failure. The mission had already stretched the limits of their endurance and faith. Now, with their survival hanging by a thread, every decision carried the weight of the colony's future. "Is there a way to isolate the fault?" she asked. "We can try a manual override," Lin said, "but it means sending someone to the junction box out there in the field." A murmur rippled through the room. The outside terrain was unforgiving, and the malfunction zone was volatile. The prospect was perilous. Ilara's gaze swept over her team. Jox Wren's rugged face was etched with grim resolve. Mira's pragmatic optimism battled with her protective instincts. Soren's disciplined demeanor masked the fear beneath. "I'll go," Alara said quietly, but with unmistakable authority. "No, it's too dangerous," Myra protested, stepping forward. Alara shook her head. "If we don't act now, the mission fails. Not just the mission, we lose the chance to change everything for the colony." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling like a tangible force. The cost was clear, the stakes impossibly high. Later, as she prepared her gear beneath the alien sky, the cold air bit at her skin. She pulled her jacket tighter, her breath forming clouds in the stillness. Above, the stars glimmer distant, indifferent witnesses to their plight. For a moment, Alara allowed herself a private reflection, recalling the stories of Earth's lost light. The dreams her parents had carried across the void, and the fragile hope now entrusted to her. The mission team gathered in the cramped shelter while Alara ventured out, their voices low but urgent as they The emergency lights flickered, casting uncertain glows on faces drawn tight with anxiety and determination. Jox shared intelligence about hidden pockets of instability in the terrain, guiding Ilara's path remotely. Captain Hale coordinated security measures, ensuring no threats from hostile factions or environmental hazards could jeopardize the operation. Suddenly, A deafening explosion shattered the fragile calm. Dust and debris stormed the air, throwing the team into frantic action. The ground trembled beneath their feet, a visceral reminder of how precarious their existence was. Ilara's voice crackled over the comms. "I'm fine. The override is almost complete. Just a few more moments." Back inside, Mira clenched her fists, eyes fixed on the screen showing Illyra's progress. "Come on, Illyra, we need you." Minutes stretched into an eternity before the system stabilized. The alarms ceased, replaced by the steady hum of restored power. Relief washed over the team, tempered by exhaustion and the sobering realization of the toll exacted. Ilara returned, dirt smudged on her face, clothes torn but spirit unbroken. The team rallied around her, their bond forged stronger in the crucible of crisis. In the aftermath, the mission's direction shifted. Illyra's leadership was no longer questioned but embraced, her sacrifice a beacon of hope. Yet, beneath the triumph lingered the knowledge that every victory came at a price. Hope was precious, but fragile. As the colony awaited news from their emissaries and began to prepare for the uncertain path ahead, Ilara stood once more beneath the stars, her thoughts a tangled web of fear, resolve, and the unyielding human spirit that refused to be silenced. This was their crucible. The price of hope was steep, but it was the cost they were willing to pay. The night stretched on, silent save for the whispered promises of the cosmos. And in that silence, Ilara found a quiet strengther signal beyond any transmission, a connection that transcended the void. The air in the colony had thickened, heavy with the weight of impending violence. Councillor Thane Rykov stood before his gathered followers, the underground bunker's low ceiling pressing down like the burden of his ambition. Flickering fluorescent lights cast jagged shadows across grim faces, eyes burning with a mix of fanatic loyalty and raw fear. His voice carved through the stale air, steady and cold, weaving a narrative of survival that demanded absolute control. "This colony stands at the precipice," he declared, his tone ironclad. "Only through strength and order can we weather the chaos that threatens to consume us. Those who oppose us wish to see us fall into ruin. We will not let that happen." The crowd responded with murmurs that swelled into fervent assent, their determination crystallizing into a force that would soon erupt. Meanwhile, in the heart of the colony, Mira Solon moved through the marketplace with purposeful strides. The once vibrant square now bore scars of neglect and fear. Stalls stood abandoned or hastily barricaded. The scent of smoke lingered faintly in the air. Yet Myra's presence was a beacon amid the darkness. She spoke passionately to the gathering crowd, her voice steady despite the palpable anxiety. "We are stronger together," she urged, eyes scanning the faces of wary settlers. "This rebellion threatens us all. But if we stand united, if we choose cooperation over division, we can survive this. We must not lose hope." Her words were met with a mixture of relief and skepticism. The fractures within the colony had run deep, but in this moment, a fragile thread of trust began to weave between the factions. Yet, beneath the surface, tension simmered, ready to ignite at the slightest provocation. Elsewhere, Captain Soren Hale marshaled the colony's security forces. The corridors were tight, the emergency lights flickering intermittently, casting a ghastly pallor on the worn metal walls. The sound of boots clattered sharply, punctuated by whispered orders and the distant echo of raised voices. Hale's jaw was clenched, every muscle taut as he coordinated the deployment of his personnel to key points throughout the colony. Despite his skepticism of Ilor's idealism, he recognized the necessity of order amid the chaos. His pragmatism drove him forward, even as he harbored doubts about the colony's fractured future. From her vantage point, high above the central plaza, Alara Voss watched the unfolding turmoil. The smoke, rising in thin spirals against the backdrop of the planet's twin moons, painted a haunting tableau. Her sharp eyes, usually calm and reflective, now shimmered with conflicting emotions: despair at the colony's unraveling, and a fierce resolve kindled by the very crisis threatening to consume them. The star maps in front of her glowed faintly, their precise lines and constellations a stark contrast to the disorder below. She whispered to herself, a mantra of hope and determination. This cannot be the end. There is still a path forward. The rebellion ignited as Rykov's loyalists seized control of key resource depots and communication hubs, triggering violent clashes with factions aligned with Myra and Alara. The colony's fragile social order fractured sharply. Gunfire echoed through narrow streets. Heated words turned to shouts and then to blows. The once peaceful settlement transformed into a battleground where trust was a scarce commodity. Civilians cowered behind makeshift barricades, caught between warring sides, their faces etched with fear and exhaustion. In the chaos, Mira's faction worked tirelessly to mediate ceasefires and evacuate vulnerable populations. Her optimism, though tested, became a rallying point for those desperate for peace. Captain Hale's forces struggled to maintain order, torn between enforcing security and navigating the tangled loyalties among the settlers. Alara, caught between her scientific pursuit and the colony's descent into conflict, found herself thrust into a reluctant leadership role. Her discovery of the transmission had sparked hope, but now it demanded courage beyond the laboratory. She convened with Mira and Hale in a cramped command center, the air thick with tension and urgency. "We cannot let this spiral further," Alara urged, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "Our survival depends on unity. The transmission isn't just a signal, it's a reminder that we are not alone in this silence." Mira nodded, her bright eyes fierce. "Then we fight not just for ourselves, but for the future we can build together." Captain Hale's gaze was hard but resolute. "We hold the line, no more divisions." Outside, the sounds of rebellion raged on, but within that small room, a fragile alliance was forged, one that might yet turn the tide. As the chapter closed, the colony stood at its breaking point, the outcome uncertain. Yet beneath the smoke and fear, a flicker of hope endured, carried in the hearts of those who refused to surrender to silence and shadow. What sacrifices would be necessary to heal the wounds of rebellion? And could the fragile threads of trust be rewoven before all was lost? The colony's fate hung in the balance, waiting for the next decisive moment to shape its future. The colony's central square was alive with murmurs and restless energy, a sea of faces reflecting the dim light of the twin moons above. Mira Solin stood on the makeshift platform, her posture steady, her voice rising clear and unwavering as she addressed the crowd. "We stand at a crossroads," she began, her bright eyes sweeping over the gathered settlers. "Our future depends not on division, but on unity. We cannot afford to be torn apart while darkness threatens us all." A ripple of agreement passed through the crowd, but it was laced with tension, the scars of recent factional violence still raw. Mira's optimism was a bomb, but the weight of their fractured society was heavy. She glanced briefly at Captain Soren Hale, standing near the edge of the gathering with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable but resolute. Hale's presence was a testament to the uneasy alliance forming beneath the surface. Once skeptical of Elara's mission and wary of faction leaders, he had come to recognize the necessity of cooperation. The colony's security network was strained thin, and Hale knew that without unity, their fragile hold on order would crumble entirely. Inside the security headquarters, the air was thick with urgency. Hale moved swiftly through narrow corridors, exchanging terse commands with officers who relayed updates from across the colony. The hum of communication devices blended with the low murmur of anxious voices. Every report from outposts, every intercepted message, was a thread in the tapestry of impending conflict. "We can't let Rykov's loyalists gain the upper hand," Hale muttered to himself, eyes scanning the latest intel. His jaw tightened. Not now, not ever. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit command room deep within the administrative sector, Counselor Thane Rykov sat before a bank of surveillance feeds, his tall frame rigid, face cold and sharp-featured as ever. The flickering images of unrest, the gathering crowds, and the defiant faces of those allied against him only hardened his resolve. He tapped a finger against the edge of the console, eyes narrowing. "They think they can undermine order," he hissed under his breath. "I will show them the price of rebellion." Rykov's strategy was ruthless, born from years of military discipline and political cunning. His faction, loyal to strict hierarchy and control, viewed the chaos as an opportunity to seize absolute power, but the colony was not yet ready to fall under his shadow. Back in the heart of the colony, Alara Voss met Myra in a shadowed alcove illuminated by the soft glow of data screens. The two women leaned close, their whispered conversation a counterpoint to the chaos outside. "We need to coordinate," Alara said, fingers tracing patterns on the screen. "The transmission gave us hope, but Rykov's rebellion threatens to undo everything." Myra nodded, her smile tight but determined. "We'll rally the factions, bring as many as we can to the table. If we can show them a future worth fighting for, maybe we can hold this fragile peace." Their plan was ambitious, relying on the trust they had painstakingly built and the shared dread of collapse. The colony's survival depended on transcending old grievances and fears, forging an alliance strong enough to resist Rykov's bid for dominion. As the night deepened, the square buzzed with growing anticipation. Mira's voice rose again, calling settlers to action. Captain Hale coordinated patrols, ensuring the safety of key locations and preparing for any violent outbreaks. Ilara's research team scrambled to keep lines of communication open, their success a beacon to those still uncertain. The first skirmishes broke out near the resource depots, but the coordinated response from Myra and Hale's coalition quickly quelled the unrest. Messages of solidarity spread, and more faction leaders chose to stand with them rather than with Rykov's oppressive vision. In the final hours before dawn, the colony held its breath. The rebellion's momentum was checked, but the threat remained. Rykov's shadow lingered like a storm cloud on the horizon, and the fragile alliance was still vulnerable to fracture. Yet, amid the tension, a spark of hope ignited. The unlikely coalition had shown that even in the depths of isolation and civil collapse, the human spirit could rally, resist, and begin to heal. Ilara stood beside Mira and Hale, watching the first light of the planet's dawn seep into the sky. "This is only the beginning," she said softly, "but it's a beginning nonetheless." The colony had faced its darkest hour and had found, in unlikely alliances, the strength to fight back. The road ahead was uncertain, but, for the first time in a long while, it was lit by the promise of unity and survival. And as the twin moons set and the distant stars began to fade in the morning light, the settlers of this remote world prepared to meet whatever came next together,